Hello, and welcome to Barbatus Catholic Podcast, the show where three Mexican dads talk about faith, life, and culture. We are your hosts,
Gustavo,
Ivan,
and Walter, and today we are going to talk about how to become a man or a woman of virtue. But first, a word from our sponsor. Now is a great time to learn more about CMF Curo as a Catholic healthcare option for your family. You can join anytime throughout the year, plus you'll experience an authentic Catholic community that cares about your whole health, spirit, mind, and body. CMF Curo members share medical burdens in community, have access to a spiritual director, concierge services, health and spiritual resources, and more. Visit mycatholichealthcare.com to learn more about CMF Curo. That's mycatholichealthcare.com. I sent Gustavo and Ivan a quiz to see which temperament they are. And because I just finished reading Virtuous Leadership by Alexander Havard, and then I picked up From Temperament to Character. Lo traigo de moda, Havard. And I was like, okay, well, I wonder if Gustavo and I are going to get the same temperament from the quiz. And lo and behold, Ivan is a witness.
They do have the same temperament. I feel so left out.
That's a melancholic for you guys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What were you?
A melancholic phlegmatic.
Got it.
This is very deep.
Yeah, very deep, very
Into
creative,
ideas.
very.
This is probably why you wanted to be a filmmaker, right?
Yeah.
This is the melancholics are good for ministry, so that checks out.
Yeah, but I'm also very introverted, so I could that turn it
checks
on
out.
for ministry,
Yeah.
but then I had to
I mean, I live with you,
I'm
so I
Yeah,
know.
I would
know how
never
that goes.
have thought of that.
I would
that
get
you're an
home
introvert.
and how's your day? I'm going to bed.
Wow.
Yeah, be like a Labrador is like, okay.
I just want to talk to my roommate.
Are you sure you don't want to play Two of Us?
The Last
of Us. Two of Us is a song.
Mm-hmm.
Just the two of us.
Yeah, fun fact, I played the first Last of Us and Walter watched as I played the whole game.
It's a one player, right?
Yeah, it's a
like
one-player game. And he would even text me when I was at work. He'd be like, are you going to play tonight? Yeah. Okay, don't start without me.
I was just be eating my dinner watching Ivan play. That was funny. It's like a movie, man. It was I was like, oh, Ivan, ahí está, el monstruo.
Well, they're making it into a movie, right?
Yeah. I think it's a series on HBO.
Anyways, what's the name of the Ellie is the girl, and what's the dude's name?
Joel.
What temperament do you think Joel is?
Ooh. He has to be choleric.
Right?
Yeah, he has to
really
be.
Towards action.
Joel has to be choleric. I think he's choleric sanguine, maybe?
Because relationships.
Choleric sanguine. And then Ellie is probably... I don't know, man. What do you think? Melancholic, maybe?
Probably.
Melancholic. Either sanguine or phlegmatic. I don't think she's choleric.
Well, the thing is, it's like a quadrant, so you can only overlap on, I think that phlegmatic and sanguine are the two at the bottom, and then choleric and melancholic are the two at the top.
Correct.
So you can be a mixture. You cannot be phlegmatic and choleric because they're opposites. I don't know that much in those studies, but we'll put a link in the show notes so you can take the quiz that we took and tell us what temperament you are.
Wait, but what was your reaction when you found out that you both had the same?
I was like, a huevo. This makes sense. But it's kind of like we are similar but different in very distinct ways.
Mm-hmm.
I think Gustavo has a hint more of choleric than I do.
You're the same, but different.
Same, but different. Yes.
Same, but different.
Yes. It's like you said it best when you said like it's like the meme of Spider-Man. They're pointing at each other.
Hmm.
Um, and also like we are like getting inspiration from all over the place here because why not? And the virtual Catholic Men's Conference happened a while ago, and I happened to watch Dr. Ryan Hanning's talk, becoming the virtuous fathers our sons and daughters need, and he even admits during his talk that he was influenced by Alexander Havard's
Uh-huh.
work, which I think is great because Havard talks about uh, magnanimity and humility, and then the four core virtues: self 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 mastery, I think,
Hmm.
um, courage, prudence, and justice. Which like self mastery is kind of like temperance. It's just a different name for temperance. Um, but Dr. Ann Henning is like, okay, great men are not born; they are made. And I think that like one of the main things to um highlight in here is that the temperament is not something that um, puts you in a box and it's like this is how you are and you cannot do anything about it. Which I think is like what I read. It was like the difference between like other like personality trait quizzes, because it's based on like the raw materials that you have, and then when you marry that idea with virtue, it's like okay, that is your natural tendency towards how you react to life,
Hmm.
and there are virtues that you can practice to get better at the things that you are lacking because of
Lacking.
your raw materials,
Hmm.
which to me is like super hopeful. And when people say like, "Oh, I cannot change. This is how I am."
Hmm.
Um, it,
Actually, not. Yeah, you
actually, you
can.
can.
You can.
People can change, and they
Hmm.
have changed. Look at Saul of Tarsus,
Hmm.
then Paul, things like that. And we all struggle, right? How do we struggle better? Um, and I know that I said in the introduction of the episode that this is how do we become men or women of virtue, but let's just focus a little bit on the masculinity, the crisis of masculinity right now,
Hmm.
mainly because we want to talk to other men, but if you're a woman and you're listening to this, show it to someone that you care for that could benefit from becoming a virtuous man, which is basically anybody
Hmm.
that that is a man. Um, so men have forgotten who they are. Um, we need to realize those kind of things. We need to realize that God is God and we are not. There's a lot of distortion in the world that we live in. Um, a distortion of what is good, of what is true, of what is beautiful, and sin is a distortion of that truth. So masculinity has been distorted via sin. Um, we live in a culture that glorifies pretty much the opposite. It's like you can be anything you want. There's
Hmm.
there's no there's this like very fuzzy definition of things. Um, everything is fluid. Everything is flexible. You can do whatever you want.
It's subjective.
It's very subjective. It's like
Hmm.
all the isms that exist in the world,
Hmm.
and whether we like it or not, um, who we are as men has been distorted by that. It's like uh, you know we have eternal teenagers, that men that are eternal teenagers that don't commit, that don't show up. And I think that the problem with this is there's like a lack of rites of passage. Um, unlike women, men don't have like physical cues for knowing that there has been a transition between boyhood and manhood, right?
Mm-hmm.
This We need other men to tell us and affirm us in our manhood. So I was in the Boy Scouts in Mexico from like 94 to 98, and I think that was like a godsend for me because I went from like the equivalent of like the Cub Scouts to like whatever it is the next level, like
Mm-hmm.
from like being 9, 10 years old or being like a preteen to a teenager. Um, and that rite of passage to be with other men who were volunteering, and God bless them, that they volunteer their time to take us on this like camping trips and all these things that were like really wholesome and
Formative, right?
formative. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
like I became really independent by being resourceful and relying on my other troop members to pretty much not die in the wilderness, and have fun in between. But there was like this rite of passage from like this you are leaving boyhood and you're going into like this teenage formative years, which I remember like the ceremonies and the bonfires and all these other things. Like my parents were present, and it was like a welcoming into, you know you are not a boy anymore, we're transitioning into manhood. um and we need that as Catholic men, because I feel like, well, and you can tell me your experience, but it's like, what do you see in parishes right now? You see women serving in most of the capacities of parish life, and not to diminish their work, it's like very valuable, but um seeing more presence of the men showing up to live in the life of the parish, to mentor other other men or younger men, um, into the identity of being like a Catholic man.
Mm-hmm.
Like, did you have like anyone that was like a transitional parent, like when you in your walk of faith, like a spiritual director or something like that growing up?
Not necessarily. I have a similar experience like you. I wasn't in the Boy Scouts, but I like play football.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well, coaches, yeah.
coaches and I was in a league where you could be there from like, I don't know, 10, 11, 12 up until before you graduated from high school. So it was like a youth league, but I was like, they let me play because they didn't have enough players. Kind of like the Sandlot, and so I was always like a little taller for my age, so I kind of like blended in.
Mm.
But between that and youth group, for me, I think it was that visual transition to say, okay, I'm a kid, they are not. I am in like the little kids youth group. My brother is not. My brother is like in the youth group,
Mm-hmm.
like 15, 16, 17. That's where I want to get. And there were men and seminarians and fathers, because we did like road trips and stuff like that. And my dad volunteered. And so I had that like a view of saying, okay, I'm here now, but then that's where I have to get. And I think it's super important to have that frame of reference. And I completely agree, that having that mentorship is crucial, because otherwise kids are being raised by YouTube.
Yeah.
YouTube and TikTok and whatever else is on their phones, without any real substance or education on the most basic principles. What is a man? What is a woman? And so yeah, I think youth group and the football team that I played like 2-3 seasons, but it was in those transitional areas of my life. It's funny because when you said that women have that like physical,
Cue.
that cue, that click.
Mm-hmm.
Some tribes have that for men in terms of saying, okay, since that can't happen to you, you're gonna have to put your hand inside of this like ant hill,
Yeah.
and that's your rite of passage.
Or we're gonna do a lot of cuts on your back
Exactly.
with this little knife,
So
and see if you don't.
if you don't die or whatever, and if you don't die, then awesome, you're a man.
Yeah. Yeesh. Well, we're not gonna go that extreme.
No, but I think that like
Emilio, párate.
that like visual representation or that visual cue, that physical cue to say, okay, maybe like el bigote chocomilquero, no? But
Like, how old were you, Ivan, when you knew that you could grow a beard? Oh,
Sorry, just edit that out. I've had to cough for like a while, but I've been holding it. Sorry. How old was I when what?
when you knew that you could grow like a full beard.
I was, dude, I started growing my mustache when I was like 14 or 15.
yeah, around the same area.
Did
Yeah.
your dad teach you how to shave?
No. No, like it just started coming out, and then I don't know, one time I just grabbed a razor and I just shaved it off myself.
Dude, I say that I did the same thing.
Mhm,
Yeah.
me too.
I mean, I would watch my dad do it,
Hmm.
but I'd never be like, hey, like, Dad, can you show me
Yeah,
how to?
same.
So I just kind of did it on myself.
Hmm.
Um,
I'm gonna
But
teach
yeah.
my kids not to shave.
Yeah.
exactly. It's at that TikTok. How to shave like a man.
You don't.
You don't. You don't shave. That's how a man shaves. Yeah, so I was like 15 when I could start growing a mustache.
So my experience was pretty funny because I had like that very faint mustache that starts coming in your teens. But I really didn't like it because it was like really pointy, like on the end.
Like
so on the
Cantinflas?
ends, no, it was kind of like it was like full enough, but it was too straight at the end. I wanted it to curve. You know what I mean?
see. So stuck out.
It stuck out a little too much. So I took the razor and I started like trying to curve it. So I took a little bit off of this side and I took a little bit off of this side.
I think
but
I know
took
how that ends.
I took more of this side and then okay, I gotta even that on the other side. So I ended up with a line a line above my like top lip. It looked like a Catherine, you know?
Oh, gotcha.
And I was like, okay. And I just shaved it all off.
I didn't know. I thought that you were gonna end up with an Adolf or something like that. Anyway.
For me, how I kind of
Mhm.
like learn about like masculinity. I mean, definitely, watching my dad, but there's also some. I feel like there was a phase where I just didn't want to do anything. Like I was just lazy. Either I was like playing video games or whatever. My dad would like try to teach me something, and I was not interested. So, but now I see it. Now I think back, I'm like, damn, I was stupid. But where I learned like a lot of masculinity was watching movies. Dude, Indiana Jones is my favorite trilogy of all time.
And I love how
I
you say
call
trilogy.
I call it a trilogy because the fourth one sucks.
Mm-hmm.
But just watching Indiana Jones, I was like, man, that's like a man right there. And I wanted to be like Indiana Jones.
Did you have a fedora?
No, but I wanted to. But now that when I think about it, it's like it's very sad to me that I had to be like Indiana Jones. I had to have
That
a
was your
whip.
standard.
That was the standard, and it's so sad because even though like I had this great model in my house with my dad, I didn't always try to be like him. Now I try to be like that to my girls every day, but it's taken me a while to like learn how to be a man, and I'm still learning.
Yeah, we're a work in progress.
Mm-hmm.
So a small primer on virtue. It comes from aretology, which is the part of moral philosophy which treats virtue, its nature, and the means of attaining it. So what I love about, like, when I started reading about virtue is that it's about becoming more human. It's like the potential of the human spirit. Um, how you can become the best version of yourself. Virtue is a habitual disposition to do good and aspiring to excellence. And we already mentioned the four human virtues would be prudence, justice, self mastery, and courage, which all of them make up character. And Hubbard adds humility and magnanimity as the essence of leadership. So prudence helps you to make better decisions, to be prudent. Justice is to give each their due. So you're just man or woman. Self mastery is a lot of controlling our passions, doing the right thing, and courage is to do the right thing, to stay the course. Those are the virtues that um, can help us grow um, as a human, as a person. And the good news about this is that the more that you practice virtue, the more you will grow in them. So it like when you're learning how to play an instrument or how to be a better athlete in a sport, repetition is key. So you know how if you have ever been in a situation where you pray to have more patience, or you pray the liturgy of humility because you have this desire to be more patient, to be more humble, and then things happen that you're like, what?
Out of those four words, prudence, justice, self mastery, and courage, what's the word that sticks out to you the most?
Self mastery.
Mm. Why?
Because I've always struggled with like food. That's like my go-to. Like I'm an emotional eater, so I think that mastering those passions, a lot of the things that I had to work through um in my life or my growth as a person has been dealing with putting passions at bay, you know. And that idea of like having control over your passions, like I control my impulses, like basically not being a beast, you know.
Hmm.
um that's why like I'm a big proponent of self mastery, even though I know that I will never reach perfection until I'm in heaven. But we can start here, and like there's like two schools of thought of that, right? Like the world is gonna tell you, if it feels good, go for it.
Hmm.
And in the Christian way, we're gonna have this struggle that says like, no, the more that we put the brakes on the passions, the freer that we're gonna be. So that's why self mastery for me is like key, I
Yeah.
think.
The truer you are to yourself, it's you're becoming more of what God intended you to be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what, when you said the sin is a distortion of truth, you're being untruthful to yourself, what you are meant to be according to God's plan. You're a man and you're sinning, then you're distorting the version of what God wants you to be, essentially. For me, I think it would have to be, the same self mastery. Prudence would be another one.
You guys are twins.
Yeah.
For you?
For me, it's courage.
Mm.
Yeah, courage has always played a big part in my life. One of the reasons why The Hobbit just really resonated with me is because I always tell people like it's an adventure, but it's all about courage. You know, you have
In
this
the face of danger.
You have this character who's just complacent in his life of comfort and everything, and then he has to leave and do something outside of himself for a big cause, for like something that's worth a lot. It had to take a lot of courage. And there's this one quote in the book that has always stuck with me. Like I eventually want to get a tattoo of this quote on me.
Is it Sam?
No, it's actually not Sam. It's actually
Oh.
it's not a quote from that somebody says. It's just in the book. It says so before they're in the mountain already, and before Bilbo goes and talks to Smaug, the
Mm-hmm.
dragon,
Mm-hmm.
there's a point where he stops and he says, going on from there was the bravest thing he ever did. The tremendous things that happened afterward, whereas nothing compared to it. He fought the real battle in the tunnel alone before he ever saw the vast danger that lay in wait. So like it took so much courage for him to be like, I'm about to go into this room with this big ass dragon. Like, just think about that. Like, put
Just
yourself in
taking
his
that
shoes. Like,
first step.
yeah, it's like, oh, and like he had to go in there. That took a lot of courage. So that's always resonated with me because I've never been one for courage. Like I've always been very complacent, and it takes a lot for me to like rise up and man, I need to do this, or I just need to like grow. I don't want to say it like that. I need to grow a pair.
Blanquillos.
Exactly. I need to grow a pair and just like, do it. You know. So courage. I'm like when you were saying those, I'm like I just saw the word courage, and I'm like, man, that's me
Mm-hmm.
in a nutshell.
Oh, that's funny that you say that because I'll get to that in a second. But um, like, okay, you're listening to this. You're like, okay, that sounds great, Walter. Whatever. But where do I start? And I think that a good place would be like self knowledge. That will sound like a little bit egocentric, but in reality, is like knowing yourself. It's not necessarily about the ego. Is knowing yourself in humility, to know where you're at, um, and know that God is God and you are not. So approach it from that perspective. If you know your temperament and you know which virtues you need to work on, which I found it very useful. So, for example, I'm a phlegmatic sanguine, so I struggle with magnanimity and endurance. Basically, dreaming big and turning that dream into a vision and then a mission and then executing. So after the mission is set, endurance to complete the job. So, for example, our little monastery, I started the blog, I set it up, I was writing for like a number of weeks, and then I stopped because we started Barbatus. So that like following through, it's like it's a sanguine in me that is like, oh, shiny, and I get distracted and I do something new. Squirrel. Um, so going through the four temperaments. So cholerics are intense and they are action or oriented. They are prone to pride and anger. So they are challenged by humility. An example of this is Joan of Arc. Joan of Arc is Saint Joan of Arc. She was a choleric, but she had humility and she was able to achieve all of these great things. She was very towards action, and she had to do all these things and at the end, die for her faith. Um, then we have melancholics, which going back to Ivan's point about courage, melancholics are deep. They are idea oriented. They are prone to self absorption and fear of action. So they are challenged by audacity. So out of thinking things over. And I thought it was really funny that Hamard puts Moses as an example, especially now that if you have done Exodus 90 or if you've read the book of Exodus, Moses is he pretty much has gone away from Egypt, right? He's living in Midian, and that's where he marries Zipporah, and God is like, no, you need to go back to Egypt and free your people. And he's like, well, why me? Like, you can choose anyone else. Like, go do it, you know. Um, grow up there and get up and do it. And we have sanguines who are spontaneous and they are people oriented. They are prone to superficiality and inconstancy and easily distracted by something new, so are challenged by endurance. We covered an example of that. Have you had that, Gustavo?
With what? I'm sorry.
Starting something new.
Oh yeah,
Like when you're doing like woodworking
so many projects.
projects.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, my fence is not finished. The bookshelf, I still need to do a couple of touch-ups. So yes, there's definitely a lot of that in me.
That is true. The phlegmatics are restrained. They are peace oriented. Um, they are content with the status quo, security, and routine. Prone to passivity, so they are challenged by magnanimity. So this is one of the things that I know that I struggle with is like don't don't rock the boat. Keep things
Hmm.
as they are. You know, if this is something I have to have all of this information before I make a decision. You know, and you want to keep the peace. You want to have everybody like, why can't we be friends? You
Yeah.
know, you like my anyway.
That was good.
Thank you,
I like
thank you,
that.
thank you. So, magnanimity is like this thinking of like bigger things, like you know, Chicharito saying, "Hay que imaginarnos cosas chingonas," you
Hmm.
know, that like battling against small mindedness. Um, that is like, I think that culturally, as Mexicans, we struggle with that
Hmm.
of thinking big. You know, I don't know if you guys would agree with me, but you know, like sometimes I would be like, well, I don't know if I can make it. Like, I never thought in my wildest dreams that I was going to end up living in the US, right? I was
Hmm.
like, well, I'm going to go check it out. I'll probably work a project there for like a year and then go back to Mexico. But then, you know, God had other plans and just being open to those big thinking ideas. And now I'm like talking to the analysts, let's have dream sessions, you know,
Hmm.
like what would be like the best possible thing that we could accomplish as a family. So letting yourself think about all of these big things that you could accomplish. Um, but the thing is, invite God into those things. Into those, ask Him. I want to do all of these great things. What do you want me to do? And the biggest thing that the more magnanimous goal that you could have is becoming a saint,
Oh yeah,
right?
that's it.
No,
So I have I'm sorry, I have a good anecdote, and we'll post it on the show notes. It's from an article called "A Catholic's Guide to the Four Temperaments." Which one are you? And they just describe, because it's a little much to take in. You know, the phlegmatic, the sanguine. It's like we're
yeah.
throwing a lot of like things out there. So if people haven't really read up on the temperaments, or this is their first time hearing about virtue as a talk, a good way to have a more concrete example of what the four temperaments are is with an analogy. So
Oh, that was a fun one.
consider four people who see a star fall to earth. The sanguine talks about it animatedly to all present. The choleric wants to form an expedition to find it and analyze it. The melancholic ponders what it means and how he feels about it. And the phlegmatic waits for others to decide what to do, as whatever decision they make is fine with him. So, in a nutshell, that'll give you a good view of those four temperaments. And this is a really good article, because then it gets into like saints and what temperaments each of those are. So you can kind of like, I think self knowledge is so important, like you mentioned, Walter, because you got to know your shortcomings and humility. Go listen to our episode on humility. Um, Humility is the base of that, to making sure that you are truthful to where you know you need to improve. So this article is
Also,
pretty
the,
rich.
the thing
Hmm.
with humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's like
Hmm.
knowing your own talents, uh, or actually, it's a good thing to know your own talents, but not acknowledging your talents is actually being ungrateful to God, because everything that you have as a person, your talents, your good things, your bad things, everything comes from God. So it's part of that humility to have exercise that this is what I am, this is who I am, and this is where I'm in relationship with God, my Creator, and the things that I have been given, what I'm working with, pretty much. So if we know our inclinations and what virtue we need to practice in order to counter them, then we have a blueprint to grow as a human. And I don't know about you, but I really get pumped about this piece of news. Um, and maybe not if you're a melancholic. You're probably pondering why this. Sorry, Evan. But no, we love you. But seriously, audacity. And I that's my spiel. Like, Ivan, do you want to add something before we wrap it up from a melancholic point of view? Like for the melancholics out there.
For all the melancholics out there, dude, we're just very chill. We really are.
You're very chill, yeah.
I don't know. I've always been, and the best way that I can put it is, if I'm having not even an argument, but like if I'm having like either an argument with my wife or just like a deep conversation with my wife, she'll tell me something, and I'm just like looking at her. I'm like looking away, and I'm just like not saying anything, and she's like waiting for me. Like, are you gonna say anything? I'm like, I'm thinking. Like, I'm
Processing.
exactly it. Like it takes me a while. Like when we're talking about something, like I process everything. Like I think of it. Like when you get that example of, no, what does it mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly how I am. So, man, we're very, I don't know, we're just very deep people, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that's good though. It's good to, it's good to have that as a virtue of we look at every possible thing. Like sometimes I make a decision like on the fly like that, but sometimes I have like, the whole expression, like, I need to take it to the Lord. That's exactly how it is. I need to take it to the Lord.
Let me pray through that.
Yeah. It's like, let me ask the Lord. Like, let me see. That's very true when it comes to a melancholic.
Nice. So I think the key here, I think the beauty of this is that you can apply it to all of your relationships that you may encounter, like your spouse, your kids, people that you work with. You could start seeing the traits of temperaments, and then it might help you. The way that I see it is like right now I'm in a position of leadership at work. It's like for me it is how I can serve the other better.
Servant leadership, baby.
Servant leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, amen to that. And you start seeing it with your kids, right? Like as soon as my oldest is 5, and I can already tell like he's a very tender-hearted boy, so it's probably gonna be a little bit of a melancholy because he feels very intensely.
Mm-hmm.
So knowing those kind of things, like, you can adapt to other people to love them better, and grow with them, and give them what they need in order to flourish. Well, especially if they're like humans that you are responsible for.
Exactly.
Anyways,
I think the closing card from Dr. Hanning's talk was really powerful to me, that men just need to step up. We need to fill a huge gap, whether it's with our families, whether it's in the culture, or all of them, and all of the above. So his call to arms was like, step up.
Yeah.
You gotta find out, educate yourself, grow in your faith, and really pass that on. So virtue is you gotta work it. You got to work it, and it's a muscle that needs exercising, like you said. Practice makes perfect. Prudence is the mother of all virtues. So, because it kind of like regulates the other virtues. So I thought that was a good tidbit that I got, because I had like Dr. Hanning during TLI.
Oh, really?
And, yeah, Tepeyac leadership.
I mean, he was in Phoenix for the longest time until he went homesteading to Tennessee.
He's living the life up there too, like
right?
a homestead and just growing everything.
There's a bunch of farm hens.
Amazing. Yeah, amazing. He said, this is just like, that's what I'm going to do.
Shout out to Dr. Ryan Henning.
Yeah.
By his book.
Yeah.
The Willpower Advantage.
Willpower Advantage.
We'll put a link to it.
It's pretty good.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Barbatus Catholic Podcast, the show where three Mexican dads talk about faith, life, and culture. If you like the show, please consider subscribing to the podcast, sharing it on social media, leaving a rate and review on Apple Podcasts, and recommending it to your friends and family. And if you didn't like it, well, just keep it to yourself and let others make their own mistakes. You can follow us on Instagram at Barbatus Catholic Podcast. Send us an email at hello@barbatuscatholicpodcast.com. On the web, we are at www.barbatuscatholicpodcast.com, where you'll find the show notes for this episode and more. And grow in virtue. And blessed Casey,
pray for us.
Until the next time.